Who is ready for React content? I need to take my sweatshirt off for this because it's actually kind of warm. I'm sweating a little bit. All right. You guys know what time it is. It's about time for some of this and some of this. It keeps snapping when I don't want it to. Fuck, whatever. You go up there. Yay, trans colors. Yeah. This is my trans rights t-shirt. Okay. Where's the React Andy window? It's down there. Shit, I'm not going to be able to do this for this race. Oh well. You guys will just have to deal with the fact that my webcam is now up in the top right rather than the bottom right for a short Mario Circuit 3 race. I wanted to react to the video about Matpat where he predicted the first... in a way, I guess, you know, predicted the first victory of Donald Trump back in 2016. I want to see what he said about the issue, because if you guys remember, the last time I watched a Matpat thing, which was also the first time I watched a Matpat thing on stream, was his video about how YouTube broke your brain. And it was supposed to be about, like, you know, it was about YouTube. It was about media culture online and how that was different from the sort of cable TV era that came before. But ultimately, it had a lot of relevant things to say about social alienation and late-stage capitalism as an environment of media consumption and highly tailored, individualized, marketized content that effectively separated everybody from one another and caused people to become so lonely and isolated that they took to very desperate measures and reactionary measures just to feel a sense of community and togetherness again, which is how you get a lot of the far-right pipeline. And I was genuinely blown away by, like, you know, the degree of analysis that was present in that video, you know, and like, you know, legitimately, I think I had sort of, you know, I gotta apologize to Matpat. You know, I wasn't familiar with your game. You know, I initially had thought that he was just kind of the funny meme game theory man, but no, he's got a big old hunk of gray matter ticking away in there, and he's got some shit to say. So, why don't we take a look at that? Film theory. How big is this? This needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go. Let's make it about the size of my webcam. And let's take a look.
Quick, who's the first presidential candidate you think of this year? Yep.
Bernie Sanders, baby. Okay, so this was, by the way, this came out in February of 2016, which I believe was actually before the primary elections for the, I guess the Republicans, or it was before somebody's primary, or at least very soon afterwards. Because you still have people like Ted Cruz and Chris Christie in this picture. You think the government will go after Matpat? Do you think he's safe? I think he's safe. Insofar as his presence as a media figure.
Talking about him.
Wow. Let me know, by the way.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film.
Is the video, like, loud enough that it's overpowering my voice? I don't have a great way of checking that in real time. If not, then I can continue. But if it's loud enough that, like, you have a hard time hearing my voice over the video, then I might need to readjust that. I think it's fine? Okay. Well, now let's continue.
Now fortified with 150% of your daily dose of knowledge. Now producing this show forces me to stay pretty darn up to date with my TV viewing. It takes me to all sorts of programming. From killing zombies, to rose ceremonies, to yelling at people who have no idea how bidding works. Come on, people! When you're the last person to bid on The Price is Right,
back when
$1 is the...
Back when the fucking, The Walking Dead was still relevant, huh? Seems fine? Okay, thank you. That's good.
best option. It's called playing the odds. But lately, there's been something interrupting my nightly dose of Modern Family. The election. But not just the election. One man in particular.
Donald Trump.
Mr. Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump
is everywhere. And sure, when you're on the short list of people who could be the next
this was
president of the United States, you should plan to get some media exposure. But
this is true. This was true for the 2024 cycle as well as the 2016 cycle. And I guarantee Matpat is going to hammer away on like how that is helping or helped him win. Is that the media outlets couldn't fucking take the cameras off him. He was everywhere. They loved him. You know? They may have pretended that they hated his boorishness and whatever, but like he was a content farm for all these motherfuckers.
it seems like every election story has been about him, and he's just one candidate out of about 300 who entered. For someone who's never held public office
That's
before,
true.
he's doing really well. His candidacy started as
2016 was a
really
big primary season.
But as of the writing of this episode, he just won the New Hampshire primaries, which is good since I've been working on this episode for a while now, and if he suddenly tanked, all this work would have been wasted. But this whole time...
Okay, so this was in the midst of the Republican primaries. Interesting.
As much as the next guy, but why would people want a real estate tycoon to be president? How does someone with no experience dominate a race full of veteran politicians? I mean, before this past
you guys already know my answer to this, but let's see what Matpat.
Public about this guy was his hair. Seriously, is that a toupee or not? So I've been following what
it's a comb over.
Trump has been doing, and I was surprised by what I found. Trump's campaign
What?
tactics are unusual, but I've seen
He breathed fire?
them before. Not from politicians, but from reality TV contestants. Donald Trump knows how TV
Celebrity
works,
Apprentice.
especially
Yeah.
reality TV, and he knows what kind of players are the most likely to survive
He fucking loves hamming it up for the camera.
to the end. And after today's episode, you will too. So if you want to become the next front
How long
runner
is
for
this?
your
About 16
nation's
minutes?
elected
17
leader,
minutes? Okay.
Stay tuned, because I'll show you how in 4 easy steps with the help of our good friend, the Don. Now this comparison of an election to reality TV might seem absurd at first, but think about it. Both are contests with a cast of characters who have cameras rolling on them all the time. Just like the Channel E and shows like Entertainment Tonight.
Yeah, you know what? This is a very pertinent point of comparison, and in fact, it's one of the biggest critiques I have with the American electoral cycle, especially first past the first past the post systems suffer from this. Is that the most high-profile elections, particularly the combination of first past the post and a presidential system, is especially deadly. It fucking devolves things into a popularity contest where people are especially susceptible to narratives of fascism and the language of only I can fix it, because the president is the most visible public figure in all of politics. Even in parliamentary systems, when you still have a prime minister, there's still a lot less of that, like, head and shoulders above everybody else that a president has in a presidential system. It's part of the reason that, like, we've even seen people like Macron start to adopt the arrogance and outright, like, hatred for his political opponents and compatriots that Trump has organically, not because he's actually like that, but because he thinks it plays well, you know? And also because he's a liberal and genuinely hates the left. But, like, it is very easy for presidential candidates, especially in a first-past-the-post system, in a presidential system, to develop that kind of ego, because that kind of ego is essential to campaigning in that kind of system, that it cultivates that. Oh, was that not? Dang.
Cover the latest news.
Wait, what? You can just drive on that? I didn't know this.
Shows like the nightly news cover the election. It's all news and it's all entertainment, just with
infotainment.
Substance most of the time. Trump is the one who seems to be most
No.
aware of the camera.
I
The one who
took
wants
that
this race to be as
wrong.
much a spectacle as it is a political discussion. And the Washington Post says he uses
Yeah,
Twitter
get
far
me
more
out of here, dude.
prolifically than the other candidates. So he's clearly playing the game in a more modern, media-savvy fashion
Yep.
than his opponents. In the first several months of his campaign, that reality TV style of self-promotion and
Unfortunate.
gamesmanship has been translating to voter support. And so, my fellow humanoids, here's the reality show blueprint that Trump has been using as his ultimate trump card. Sorry, that pun was pretty ham-handed. Step 1, create a clear persona.
Cock block
Reality
for
shows
now?
have
True.
big casts and a limited time to introduce viewers to them.
Shit, that's true. I didn't think of that. 2016 was a really big primary season, which means there were a lot of fucking people trying to get the presidential nomination from their political party on both sides of the two-party spectrum. And Trump stood head and shoulders above everybody else on the Republican side. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton didn't win because people liked her. She won because the Democratic Party preferred her. There was a lot of institutional fuckery in why Bernie Sanders lost the Democratic Party primary and why Hillary Clinton won it. The Democratic Party's primaries are objectively less democratic than the Republican Party's primaries. It was literally, for the Republicans, it was literally a popularity contest, and Trump was able to win by being charismatic and standing above everybody else, being the funny haha guy that loved hamming it up for the camera and called Chris Christie fat. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, because there's a lot of Byzantine proceduralist committees and meetings and caucuses and whatever that have to happen and that don't determine it by direct popular vote, the Democratic Party had a much easier time making it not a popularity contest. If the Democratic primary were a popularity contest, Bernie Sanders would have won. He would have beaten Trump in the general election, and America would be in an order of magnitude more favorable of a position now than it is today. But that's the difference. Is that, you know, those reality TV skills help you in the Republican Party way more than they do in the Democratic Party, you know? Because when you think about it, you know, you could, as much as I am loath to compare our favorite Jewish grandpa Bernie Sanders to fucking Donald Trump, right? They are, in a way, two sides of the same coin. Immensely popular and populist, willing to lambast the system for what it does wrong and how it cheats the American people, and hated, at least on an internal level, by their own political parties. The Republican Party really didn't like Trump before he took the reins. You know, a lot of them still don't like him. But that's not how politics works. But on the Democratic side, that is how politics works. If the leadership doesn't like you, you get snubbed. No. Right at the end, again, every single fucking time. Man, I'm not having a good one today.
So the simpler and more
Good session, that is.
persona is, the better. Pop culture philosopher Chuck Klosterman notes in his book.
It's probably about to say exactly what I said there.
Reality shows
Matpat
like
is.
The Real World, the granddaddy of reality TV, put a lot of effort into boiling down their participants into oversimplified archetypes, like the guy who plays the race card or naive Southern girl. Think about some of reality TV's most iconic moments and characters. Johnny Fairplay from Survivor, who lied about his grandmother's death to stay an extra week on the show.
My grandmother's sitting home watching Jerry Springer right now.
Villain, Puck from The Real World, who wore a Nazi swastika shirt and refused to remove it when he was asked to by his Jewish housemate. Villain, Omarosa from season 1 of The Apprentice, who wrongfully...
Not sure Sanders would have actually beaten Trump. Just seems like the media would have smeared the fuck out of him and legitimized a lot of what Trump said about socialists or Marxists or whatever. No, Bernie Sanders would have unambiguously beaten Trump in 2016. Even in a hostile media environment, the hostile media environment did very little to dent Bernie Sanders' popularity in the eyes of the American people. I know that Corbyn was also ousted in the United Kingdom, but that's because the United Kingdom, in a way, is actually more institutionalist than the United States. Popular opinion matters even less in the UK than it does in the US. You know, the media can do all that shit all it wants, but at the end of the day, it can't switch those votes from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump. And way more people identify with Bernie Sanders and are motivated by him than are motivated by Donald Trump. You know, you can take a look at the kind of the map of people that donated money to Bernie Sanders in the 2020 presidential race. It was everybody. He outraised his Democratic companions in small dollar donations by like 5-1. There were like small pockets of candidates' hometown or home state, home region where people, you know, donated more to them than to other candidates. But then the entire rest of the United States, everywhere, was donating money to Bernie Sanders. People in America fucking love that guy because he is the leftist populist counter-narrative. Trump is transparently dishonest. He's just willing to go up there and act like he doesn't give a shit and just talk to the crowd like he's riffing. He's willing to go up there and riff and play the part of the populist. Bernie Sanders has all of that and more. There is no reality in which Donald Trump wins an election over Bernie Sanders. You know? Because Bernie Sanders has everything that makes Trump compelling and more. And because Bernie's not even a Democrat, he's not part of the Democratic Party. The Democrats would probably go with the attack line, he's not even a Democrat, which would backfire. People would only support him even more. Like, I can see already the kind of rhetoric that media would employ against Bernie Sanders. That's only going to make him more popular. No. How did I hit that? I swear I veered to the left. Whole place? Not bad.
He claimed that other contestants were racist.
I called her a baby. I told her to go in the corner and get her a pacifier in her blanket and go cry, which is what she always does.
Villain. Huh. It's funny how many of the first examples to come to mind are villains. Interesting. But if you really want evidence of this trend, look no further than shows like
Trump played the part of like a charismatic villain, I
where all
suppose.
teams come packaged with a one-line identifier. Dating, newlyweds, LGBT YouTubers. Wait, Tyler? Tyler, what are you doing on there? And Bernie Burns. Well, fine, I see that neither of you wanted to be my partner. That's okay. My feelings aren't hurt or anything. In all seriousness, though,
Matpat is gay? Confirmed? It's possible he was just riffing. I don't know the Matpat lore, but yeah. That's funny, so I choose to believe it.
Brains versus brawn versus beauty. It's like high school all over again. Jock, nerd, girl with loose morals. We as
Okay, so he's kind of taking the scenic route to describe what I just described, that it's all a popularity contest of charisma, character archetypes, and whatnot, and how well you can ham it up for the camera. And Trump was just good at hamming it up for the camera.
Humans just like to classify. It's more efficient. If I say, man, that guy is such a jock, you already know a lot about him without me having to
Yeah, he's trying to talk about politics while not being a politically oriented YouTuber, you know?
Explain his whole life history. And if you're picking one candidate in this year's presidential race who doesn't care about getting along with other people and fits into a few simple categories,
and that's fine. I don't doubt that like Matpat is a pretty progressive guy.
You know what kind of qualities Trump is using to identify himself with. He's a businessman, not a politician. He's rich. He's famous. He's successful. And he's not afraid to say whatever pops into his head. Depending on your perspective, he's either a bully or a no-nonsense outsider. But either way, Trump has labeled himself better than any other Republican in the race. Other candidates are more experienced.
Exactly what I was saying.
Put Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz into a box that easily? No. And that makes them a lot harder to follow because it requires more effort to know who they are and what they stand for. At this point, everyone knows who Donald Trump is and what he stands for. He has the clearest persona. Step 2, stick to a message.
A lot of the politicians that are a lot of the conventional, like, institutionalist politicians in America are absolute vacuums of charisma. No Riz. Like, El Riz, and then Trump got up there, had, like, I've got buckets full of Riz. You wouldn't even believe how much Riz I have. And rizzed up the American people on live TV, and rizzed up the, you know, the media producers and the anchors and all the, you know, the shareholders and literally everybody, so they couldn't take the camera off him. He rizzed his way to the presidency. It actually doesn't have anything to do with him lying. It has to do with him being, you know, being a slimy ass, like, sleazy Rizzlord. You know? I need an item box. There we go. That's good.
The Biggest Loser, for instance, has 11 cameras running for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 616 hours of footage to make a single 42-minute long episode. So if you have something to say, you better make it simple and you better make it quick. The #1 slot of pretty much any greatest reality TV moments of all time list tends to go to the infamous snake and rat speech from the final episode of season 1 of Survivor. This was an electric moment of television. In it, truck driver Sue Hawk delivers a scathing speech to her former alliance mates, equating one to a snake and one to a rat.
But if I were to ever pass you along in life again, and you were laying there dying of thirst,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And encouraging the voters to follow the course
Ow.
of nature and
Crap.
let the snake eat the rat. It's so memorable because it's so simple and direct and honest. And as a result, it's endured for decades since it was first uttered. Or if you want an even better example of sticking to a message, look no further than Dr. Will Kirby from Big Brother. Never before has a clearer case of sociopathy been put to film as this man, the self-proclaimed puppet master.
No! What the fuck? How did that happen?
But what makes him so special? In the second season, he repeatedly told everyone to their face that he would lie to and betray them on the show. And he did! Week after week, his teammates would get backstabbed, and yet they continue.
A lot of this is just him talking about reality TV, which I will not have that much to comment on because I fucking hate reality TV and I don't watch it and I just don't care. But regardless, I think we've already established the broader point that he's making is something that I agree with and would also make just in slightly shorter format, which is that Trump is a reality TV villain. A lot of charisma, very memorable, endears himself to some, hated by a lot of others, and is really good at keeping the cameras on him and identifying himself as distinguished from everybody else. He was always going to win the primary because everybody else is a fucking Riz vacuum. Only thing is reality TV isn't real. Neither is the persona that people present in politics, with very, very rare exception. Trump on camera is basically the same as Trump off camera. Bernie Sanders on camera is pretty similar to Bernie Sanders off camera. There is a fucking world of difference between every other Democratic and Republican politician on camera and them off camera. And that's the important thing.
You to trust him until he eventually won the whole show. He won the show! But when I say that he stuck to his message, he really stuck to his message. When he returned in the All-Star season, he did it all again. Literally telling everyone in the house in the first few weeks how much he hated them.
So I had a heart-to-heart with myself, and I said, Will, what is the reason? Why are you having such a hard time playing? And this is the truth. I can't find an individual to hate. Because I hate you all.
And then went on to make the Final Four and ensure that his best friend would take home the grand prize. But it may well be that Donald Trump learned to simplify his message from one of the contestants on his very own show, the breakout star Omarosa. Lover, hater, or love to hate her, Omarosa always stayed direct and on message, including when she coined what has become one of the most famous mantras in reality TV.
I didn't come here to make friends. I said that from day one.
Omarosa wasn't secretive about doing whatever it would take to win, and she won a lot of fans over with that level of honesty. Suffice it to say that Donald Trump is probably not running for president to make friends.
No,
Just like
he definitely wasn't.
He's trying to win. And in case there's any doubt, he talks about winning constantly.
Winning. We have to win in Iowa. I'm going to win. I think I'm going to win Iowa.
Man, that guy toots his own horn a lot. You might say that he's trumpeting his success. Trumpeting. All right, that was the last Trump pun, I swear. When it comes to Trump's message, he keeps it simple and punchy. In fact, his message is so simple, it's comprised of words kids could see on Sesame Street. Tough, win, great. One syllable at a time.
That's true.
Much easier than that.
Trump being very punchy and very, like, limited with his lexicon actually does a lot to make him play well for the media cameras because it plays into the very short social attention span, socio-political attention span that Americans and just people in general have. And I might add to that as well, that this sort of plays into another thing that I was saying in a segment that I was going to upload, and I'm working on, about how the conventional neoliberal wisdom of politics is to shift yourself around to adopt the least offensive set of positions possible so as to not alienate everybody. But in so doing, you in effect alienate everybody because you have now made it clear that you don't actually stand for anything that would potentially make people disagree with you, right? In trying to, alter yourself like a mold of clay to be more likable, you appear as a snake in the grass. Trump, being boorish but consistent in like, I don't know, in his like flippancy, in his rhetoric, in being on message, was like able to cultivate that consistency. He, in alienating some people, cultivated an extremely strong and consistent base because it appeared as though he had real positions that he actually supported and was willing to represent even when it meant a hostile media environment. He ignored all of the consultants that were telling him, yeah, just fucking shift your positions around to find the least offensive set. Yeah, in trying to please everybody, you please nobody. In trying to be inoffensive to everybody, you offend everybody because they see you for the duplicitous snake that you are.
Kind of reminds you of hope and change a couple years ago, huh? And the easier it is for people to understand your message, the easier it is for them to get behind you. Step 3.
Hey, that's what that's what the MAGA poster used to look like? That's kind of wild.
Let's face it, our favorite reality TV personalities aren't always the most mentally or emotionally stable, but those kinds of people are also the producer's favorites, because you never know what they're gonna do next, and that makes for exciting television. We've already talked about a lot of other examples, but the one I'd like to focus on here is from one of America's finest artistic achievements, RuPaul's Drag Race. If you're unfamiliar with the show, RuPaul's Drag Race has nothing to do with souped-up cars. It features drag queens competing in
RuPaul's Drag Race has nothing to do with an actual drag race. It has to do with drag.
Competitions ranging from fashion to stand.
If you were familiar with the social, like, culture war political discourse the past couple of years, you've probably heard of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Comedy to lip syncing, and yeah, you can bet there's plenty of drama to go around.
Because you're doing a lot of talking. You've been everybody's BFF and No, this is not RuPaul's best friend, Greg.
Sherlock.
The best came in season 4 of Drag Race, which featured Chad Michaels, a Dead Ringer Cher impersonator.
I'm Cher, bitch.
Sharon Needles, who was equal parts.
I didn't get an item.
And Latrice Royale.
Get those nuts away from my face.
But in a field of talented,
I don't know the
funny
lore.
drag queens, it felt like one in particular, Fifi O'Hara, was dominating all the airtime. How? By bringing the heat to anyone and everyone. Everyone hated her. She was the worst. I hated watching her. It was awful. But at the same time, I couldn't look away.
At least I am a showgirl, bitch. Go back to Party City where you belong.
Oh shit.
Similarly, nobody
Drum.
I
don't care.
Created more beef than Donald Trump. He started so many fights, it's a surprise that Vince McMahon hasn't hired him on to be a professional wrestler.
Imagine if this show came on today. Yes, I could. It would get canceled. And I know this because there are media companies like Disney that are pulling episodes of shows that have progressive themes. Again, that like preemptive kowtowing bit. I'm gonna get up here, and then I'll continue. Alright, looking good. Pro wrestling.
The list of people Trump has bashed is lengthy. Fox News reporters, fellow Republicans like Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush, and of course, Hillary Clinton. Combine this with Trump calling Mexicans rapists and proposing a ban on allowing Muslims to enter the country, and Trump has been all over the news cycle since the moment he declared his candidacy. They say that any publicity is good publicity, and Trump is definitely winning that game. According to the Washington Post, from June through November, Donald Trump had more airtime on the news than the entire Democratic field combined.
That's crazy. It is actually insane how much news coverage Trump got and continues to get.
Advertising, it would be more surprising if Trump weren't in the lead. I mean, look, it must be effective. You don't see me making film theories about other candidates. Touche, Donald. Touche. And finally, step 4. Stay one step ahead of your opponents. In reality competition shows, the best players are the ones who can read their opponents and disguise their strategy. Let's take a look.
He generates clips? He does. That's what I was saying earlier. He's a content machine for the news media networks.
Has there been a clearer example of sociology put to film as this man? And that's including Dr. Will. Russell played the game 3 times. He was a finalist.
I feel like, okay, I want to pause here because I've let some large sections of this go, like, playing without me saying anything. And I want to explain why I'm not really commenting on a lot of this. I'll reiterate this at the end, but a lot of this is reality TV, like Survivor, fucking RuPaul's Drag Race, the show, you know, Celebrity Apprentice, WWE, and I don't give a shit, and so I can't comment on it because I haven't seen and will not see any of that. But, you know, I just, like, I made my point very shortly, and so I guess I'm just trying to let that sit, because the point that Matpat is making, I fundamentally agree with, and he's still on that point, but I've already made it, you know? Yeah, it doesn't matter if the news agrees with Trump or not. It has his name in the title, and it's out there. They're talking about him. He's all that they're talking about. In fact, that's part of the problem with the news coverage, is that Trump is such an easy content farm that it's a very convenient distraction for them to only talk about him as though he's the ultimate villain and nothing else is wrong, when in reality, he's, as to borrow some language from my own parlance, he's just one grain on the beach. He's just one grain of sand. There's a whole ass beach you're not talking about. You know? And the beach is blighted and decaying and like whatever the hell else. And you're over here talking about this one grain of sand.
He wasn't a finalist. His own team lost on purpose because
you feel
they
me?
were so scared of him. What put Russell on everyone's watch list was that he broke the game, circumventing rules that everyone had just assumed were in place. Specifically, he found the hidden immunity idol, the item that protects people come voting time, before having any clues about where it was or the show telling them it was a thing that existed.
I think I just found the second hidden immunity item without a clue.
He convinced a player on the other team to give him an immunity idol on a season in which the show itself labeled Russell as a villain.
You don't hand the enemy the idol, especially when his name is Russell Hands. You don't do that.
He even resorted to psychological warfare against his own team by pouring out their water and burning their socks in an attempt to break their spirits. As Russell put it himself, if I can control how they feel, I can control how they think. This man, he is like a hero to me in only the way that like a supervillain can be like someone that you admire, you know? Anyway, now look at Trump. Trump's opponent spent most of January drumming up as much support in Iowa as possible. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio each held twice
doing the conventional wisdom thing.
But Trump played a wild card with a surprise endorsement from Sarah Palin. Palin's speech was mocked by a lot of people, but Trump was able to stay in the limelight ahead of his competitors through
I
one
just wanted to get
single
rid of that
event.
green shell.
Remember, this wasn't just any endorsement. This is Sarah Palin, a political figure who is very divisive. Someone who the sheer mention of her name drums up emotion with most voters. And that gets attention. Who cares about a bunch of stuffy events? Here's a news story I can really get headlines with. And then, 2 days before January's final debate, Trump just decided to hold his own rally instead of attending it. Like Russell, he's breaking the game, challenging rules that everyone just assumed were in place. I mean, who skips debates?
You earned it.
It's unheard of. This made headlines in its own right, but now think about his opponents. Trump had spent so...
That's true. Trump, he also skipped the 2023 Republican primary debate, which meant that, like, you know, he essentially deprived everybody else of ammunition to farm content off of him. Every other politician, so fucking bad in front of the camera by comparison, that, like, they all read as desperate because they can't help but talk about him even when he's not there. Even when he's not in the debate, he's winning the debate. Does that make sense? Again, just part of that, like, ability to be charismatic and ham it up for the camera that an institutionalist couldn't possibly have. You know?
So much time criticizing and insulting the people on that stage, you know that they were prepared to go on the offensive. But at the last minute, he pulls the rug out from under them and doesn't show, putting them off their balance and forcing them to rethink their approach.
Feels a bit like Pennywise. How so?
Well, it worked. Who are they going to attack now? The Washington Post notes the candidates switched more of their attacks to Ted Cruz in Trump's absence. Throughout his whole campaign, Donald Trump has differentiated himself by not following the beaten path, and in doing so has tried to control how his opponents feel when he attacks.
I meant to throw that forward.
Because, like Russell, if he can control how they feel, he can predict how they'll think, and more importantly, how they'll react. So congratulations, you now know the 4 steps to being a front runner in your presidential campaign.
He's a drama queen.
Donald Trump has a lot of things going for him. He has the clearest persona for everyone to understand. He keeps his messages simple and is able to dominate the conversation. He brings enough drama to keep voters' attention, and he can even
Feels like the only way to get rid of him is not give him attention. Well, no, that's not the only way to get rid of him. Trump is now, like, you don't get rid of Trump. You get rid of the Republican Party. The way you get rid of Trump is you let him die, right? The way you get rid of, well, Trump in a political sense is you get rid of the fucking Republican Party. Otherwise, they're gonna Weekend at Bernie's that shit. You know, they're gonna put his corpse up there and try to have his corpse hammered up for the camera if they can. You know? It's too late now, but in 2016... Yeah, in 2016, the way to do that would have been actually... It would have been one of two things. Number one, don't fucking content farm off of him like there's no tomorrow. Or, since the media would not have been able to help themselves, not even remotely, to run Bernie Sanders. The way that you defeat Trump in 2016, the way you get rid of him, you run Bernie Sanders against him. You know? And ultimately, in that environment, I actually think that the media would prefer Trump. And Bernie Sanders would still win. Because now, like, once the ruling class has all decided, or the owning class has all decided they prefer Trump, now everybody's going to be more sympathetic to Bernie. Because now Trump is the establishment pick and Bernie's the outsider. You know? Bernie's the real populist. Trump is the puppet of the media establishment and the elites. You know? Does that make sense? Imagine the ruling class after a Bernie Sanders win. Oh, they would be fucking... They would be on their shit. They'd be putting out news piece after news piece. Bernie Sanders is anti-Semitic. He's a communist. He's a socialist. Bernie Sanders hates America. He's controversial. Here's his dangerous, controversial plan to bankrupt America. Like, the headlines would be fucking insane.
Are about to make.
So I feel like he's a bit like Pennywise. The way to beat him is to call him out as a big bully he is. No, in that way, he's actually not like Pennywise. Because Trump, the only thing that the media has been doing since Trump got elected is calling him out as a bully. That's the only thing. That was all the media coverage. You yourself said that it doesn't even matter if the media coverage agrees with him because they're giving him that media coverage. All the media does. This is the problem with the media. The only thing that they do is call Trump a bully. That's what everybody loves about him. Is that he'll just fucking talk shit about other politicians when they're right next to him. You know? He'll just go up on stage and say, yeah, Ted Cruz's dad is the, you know, Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer, by the way, or some shit. You know? The reverse effect will occur with Bernie Sanders. Game theory is putting out. That, like, that's not the only way to get rid of Trump. That's the only way that Donald Trump succeeds. Is that you constantly look at him and call him a bully. Oh, pointing out.
So obviously, he has to be a lock to be the Republican nominee.
Yeah, in fact, game theory just spent the whole time pointing this out. That, like, the more of a bully somebody is, the more memorable they are, the more they're, like, a fan favorite. Even if it's in the sense that, you know, people love to hate them. You know? That's exactly what the media and the liberals did in 2016 and 2024, and it's why both times they lost. You know?
Well, not necessarily. Because while
Oh,
all these steps are
okay.
critical to making reality TV stars, they don't necessarily create reality TV winners. Omarosa, Fifi O'Hara, and Russell Hantz got relatively famous, but they all lost. Puck was the most famous person on The Real World San Francisco, but he was evicted from the house midway through the season because everyone hated him. And this isn't even a show where evictions are a thing that exists. They're just supposed to live together. You're not voting people out. Of everyone that we talked about, Dr. Will is the only winner. And that's because, man, this guy is charming. He is so awful, but he is so charming.
Do you think it's easy being this good looking?
You're not calling bully standing up to him? I don't know.
Easy.
Either way. Standing up, yeah, there we go. Standing up to him would have been the way to do that. Calling him a bully is not. Calling somebody a bully is not standing up to them. Standing up to Trump would have been to stand up to the ruling class, to the owning class. But the thing is, everybody else in the media, they're birds of a feather with Trump, baby. They're all rich. They're not going to stand up to one of their own. You kidding me? They have the same interests. Their only problem with Trump was that, yeah, he's a little mean. That's it. And, you know, because Trump is in politics, this is the thing that differentiates politics from reality TV. There is no standing up to a politician. You stand up to their ideology, to their coalition, to their party. That is what you do. But the news media is part of that broad coalition of business interests. They can't stand up to Donald Trump, and they don't want to, because they are part of that same group with him. They treated him as an outsider, because if they recognized him as an insider, they would be lobbing critique at themselves, right? They're like painted themselves into a corner that way. Media being explicitly on the side of Trump would help Bernie because the news would be constantly about him. His platform would be put out there. Yes, that's right.
Survivor contestant who emerges as an early leader.
And that's a significant part of why I believe Bernie would have beaten Trump, is because once the news media coalesces behind Trump with somebody who is overtly hostile to the interests of the owning class, you know, an actual outsider populist. Now they have control over the populism, and Trump is the insider, you know?
Support, gotten a lot of airtime, but now his tribe is trying to bring him down before it's too late. In this case, the tribe is the Republican establishment, and the endorsements made by Republican
There we go.
and members of Congress are like votes.
Oh, wow, Haley?
In the tribal council. The endorsements in favor of Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Jeb Bush continue to climb, while endorsements for Donald Trump are few and far between.
Yeah, like, exactly, Real Cryoraptor. That's exactly what would happen. Bernie is a communist. He wants to bankrupt America by raising the minimum wage to $20 and guaranteeing a worker's right to organize and, you know, force people to join unions. And people see that and like, well, shit, I want higher wages and to join a union. You know, and enough people are skeptical of powerful institutions on principle that any negative media coverage of Bernie Sanders, like blatantly negative partisan coverage of Bernie Sanders by news media, will have the opposite effect. You know, that's the kind of thing that disillusionment does. It turns people against institutions, so that when institutions express a viewpoint, people are naturally inclined to reject it.
Republican leaders worry that this guy's an embarrassment, that they won't be able to get Trump to compromise, that he's not the kind of guy who'll sit down to dinner and meet you halfway, like some sort of Lady and the Trump. Sorry, honest talk, I have a serious pun problem. Need like some sort of
That's
pun
true.
addicts.
He's
my name is
addicted.
Patrick, and I'm a pun addict. Anyhow, the Donald
He's addicted to puns.
After leading the polls for most of the few months leading up to the Iowa caucus, he finished second, receiving well below the percentage of the vote he was projected to get.
Holy
Trump's
shit.
not done
Give me that
fighting
mushroom.
yet. Like I said, he won the New Hampshire primary, but there's definitely blood in the water. If the parallels
Son of
between
a...
Trump and
Everybody has it in for me this time, I swear.
he might be able to outwit his opponents in debates and outplay them in the media game, but he probably won't outlast them. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory.
Huh.
And cut.
Interesting.
Mr. Trump, quick question. What would you say to someone who...
Okay. There's one last bit that I wanted to look at there that he said at the end. I didn't quite catch it, and then I'll do some like final like analysis of that, and then like wrap up the stream. Because I know I didn't say a whole lot for a decent chunk of that. Alright, I'm gonna chain this. Alright. Okay.
Hey, it's an outplayed reality stars are any indication, he might be able to outwit his opponents in
I forgot
debates
Matt
and
said Trump was
outplay
gonna
them
lose?
in the media
Interesting.
game, but he probably won't outlast them. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.
Okay. You know what's interesting? Yeah, Gotron. His prediction that Trump would lose the election is oddly dissonant with everything that he described. All of the systemic biases towards charismatic outsiders that he outlined in this video paint a picture exactly contradictory to what he predicts at the end, that he might not outlast his political opponents. Now, funnily enough, I think this prediction is more appropriate for 2016 than 2024 or even 2020, because remember, 2020 was an exceptional year because of the pandemic, but in 2016, Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. He only won that election because of the Electoral College. Hillary Clinton would have won the election if it was like a national popular vote thing, right? But again, there's that weird contradiction. So I think that you should be more willing to go off of the initial like 16 minutes of this video rather than the bit at the end, because Trump is all of those things. This is really pertinent analysis by Matpat, is that the reason that Trump is able to have such power in the media cycle is because he is a charismatic, villainous outsider who loves hamming it up for the camera. People are going to love you for that, even if that generates controversy. What that means is that you have appeal to some people. Instead of being a like unidentifiable gray glob of politician who appeals to nobody and somewhat offends everybody by having no real identity or values, you could be extremely polarizing because there are things that you ostensibly stand for, and you could have a very dedicated following and sympathetic group of people who are willing to support you when it comes down to it. You know, because Trump seemed to have actual opinions on things, incoherent as they were, people loved him for that. And people hated him for that. But even, you know, among the people who hated him, common between both of those groups, they couldn't shut up about him. And make no mistake, the news media was on that hate, that love train, that love to hate train. Trump made the news media a unfathomably large amount of money because he generates clicks. And that's exactly like what helped Trump win, is because the media focused on him being mean and boorish and an outsider, while they couldn't actually attack any of these substantive, like, any of the actual politics he was espousing, because they, the ruling class, ultimately share the same basic politics. And that's why Trump won. He had all of the biases in the media climate going for him. Like, a lot of things worked in his favor, mostly having to do with the fact that he was charismatic and willing to just riff with the audience and not act like the American people are subhuman. You know? Like, it's actually unreal how much hatred the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton had for their own base. Wouldn't it be funny if Matpat was a liberal? I think he is a liberal. And I don't mean that in the most derogatory sense possible. You know, this is not me condemning you to liberalism, right? Like, this is not your death sentence, right? This is me saying I think Matpat is actually a very critically aware and capable individual. He, you know, very strong sense of critical thought. He's able to engage with a materialist framework. But I think there are, like, a lot of ways in which, since he is not a typically political channel or individual, at least that I know of, he is in some ways an embodiment of the passive absorption of liberal ideology, where he still succumbs to some biases that he is not aware of that a liberal system would instill in people. You know? Which is why I think you get that dissonance, where at the end he predicts Trump may not outlast his opponent, but he is capable of outwitting and outplaying them. Does that make sense? So, you know, in short, right? Another W from Matpat. I didn't know this video existed. You know, I didn't realize that Matpat was analyzing, you know, Trump's prospects for the 2016 election back in the day. Plus 22 for 6? I'll take that. Bugcatcher, welcome to chat. Matpat is a centrist neo-lib agenda. I don't think he is, I'll be real. Good shit post, thank you, very cool. But I don't think he is. I think he's just, you know, I think if he had to make a video about subjects relating to neoliberalism and centrism, I think he would very firmly land on the leftward side of the fence there, right? I don't think, like, if he did some research into that, he wouldn't be that kind of person. Yeah, the only reason I think he might come off that way is because he probably just hasn't done research on it. He's a smart dude. You know? And, in fact, if you've seen my other video reacting to him talking about how YouTube broke your brain, he talks about social alienation. He talks about the decaying of community infrastructure that enables people to find purpose in life. A lot of that is intrinsically tied to the socioeconomics of localities and regions all across the United States. A lot of the places where he describes this social alienation rising and nationalism rising as a way to have some kind of synthetic alternative to, I don't know, TV culture, which is now gone. The way that he talks about that makes it very clear that he's, you know, at least tangentially touching on the fact that neoliberalism has fucking decayed the social landscape to the point that people are desperate. You know, a lot of the things that he talks about that are responsible for creating this are neoliberalism. He is not as zoomed out and as directly political as a commentator such as myself or Hassan or Vosh, but in so many words, that video about YouTube breaking your brain is a critique of neoliberalism. It is a critique of the subscription-based model and of something that prioritizes the absolute maximizing of profit at the expense of social utility. That's in effect what that is, you know? He might not even realize it, but he's not a neoliberal. Cool video. Anyways. Damn, you come up off as smart. I'm a little caught off guard. It's like having a podcast board in my brain. Well, I'm glad I pleasantly surprised somebody. You know, you don't usually expect intelligence from a Twitch stream. I'm glad that you're pleasantly surprised there. And welcome to the stream. Unfortunately, I'm welcoming you right at the very end because I usually only stream for about 2 hours anyway, and I just did that React video. You can probably expect to see that on YouTube. Hopefully people are able to draw a consistent through line. Hopefully I conveyed a consistent through line in reacting to that. Yes, Gotron, this will be a segment. Right-wingers don't know Matpat? Really? That's interesting. I guess I find myself now being passively curious about these sort of political demographics of people that watch Matpat. I don't know if he has any conservatives in his audience. But yeah, if I wanted to recap that, another based W from Matpat. I know I said that already, but yeah, the scenic route, like I said, but very correct encapsulation of what gained Trump so much media attention in the 2016 election cycle. And I think, despite the little segment at the end, I think that was a strong prediction of Trump at least enjoying some degree of political success. Politics is turbulent, predictions are hard, and they can be inconsistent. But yeah, I guess Matpat did kind of predict the rise of Donald Trump, both in 2016 and now we saw actually the same thing in 2024. He was talking about the ability of Trump to riff and his characteristics of being mean and a bully a la reality TV villain and how the media couldn't shut the fuck up about him. And all of that applied to the 2024 campaign as well. And it helped Donald Trump that his opponent was so comparatively uncharismatic and not even likable as a villain, just unlikable. They didn't want anything to do with them. They didn't want to talk about them. They didn't want to look at them. It's that kind of unlikable. Trump is a magnet for attention. He's charismatic. That was true in 2016. It was true in the 2024 election cycle. Even though he ran like a pretty shit campaign, the media still couldn't shut up about him. And the Democrats still, the best that the Democrats and media outlets could come up with is he's mean and a bully, because at the end of the day, Trump is of the same ilk of the establishment. Like he is a billionaire. He markets himself as an outsider, and it's convenient for people to label him as such, but ultimately they can't actually critique him or meaningfully oppose him, because to do so would be to oppose their own interests on the part of the news media as a set of privately owned institutions. Anyways, that's all for me. Future me, cut the segment there. I'm gonna find somebody to raid now. Thanks for watching, and support the channel if you would be so kind.